Hey guys, Emily here from Apex Performance Wellness and Rehab. I'm here with John, our doctor of physical therapy, and today we are going over different variations of the single leg RDL.
We're going to talk about RDLs, the Romanian deadlifts, a very classical strength training exercise, fantastic for building up your hamstring and your glutes and your low back muscles. So we're going to start with a classic two-legged Romanian deadlift. So Emily will stand sideways to y'all. So she's standing with feet shoulder width apart, soft knees. Okay. So she's going to hinge her hips back, keeping her back straight, and slide the bar down her thighs. Good. So she's doing a pretty good job. So common mistakes, let's show some of the common mistakes. So common mistakes will be like rounding the back as you go. So let's see how it goes. So you're trying to keep your back straight as you go. The other really common one we see with beginners is they don't hinge the hips, they mostly just squat. So they'll kind of go like this, which in itself, squat's a great exercise, but it's not what we're after with this particular exercise. So a couple of ways to learn how to do the hip hinge. So the first one is classic way is many people learn is to put the dowel or a stick behind their back. So it should touch their head, their upper shoulders, and their sacrum. So as she's hinging, she's trying to keep those 3 points of contact. Awesome. So Emily's common mistake is she'll usually overarch her back.
Yes.
Could you show that? Yeah, she'll get a little too much space. Which again is, everyone's built differently. No one's going to look exactly the same. But we're trying to keep those points of contact. Another great way is to actually use a external device right in front of your shins, so you learn to not do the squat portion. So if you grab something about
the dowel too?
You can, yep. Okay. We can combine it. So if you put the dowel behind your back there, and she gets her knees or shins right next to it, that feeling of it on your knees is going to force you to stick your butt back, because otherwise you hurt your knees. Yep.
Is it good or bad that there's more space when I'm pushing back?
Ideally, you want to keep your shins kind of where they are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. So that's a strong position. If your shins go too far back, you usually tend to get too much on your heels and your toes come off.
I think I commonly do that as well.
It's a very common mistake. You want to keep that foot nice and firm on the ground. There's something I use a lot called the tripod. So we did this in another video, but the tripod, if you can turn to face the camera a bit more. So think about equal balance between right behind your big toe, right behind your pinky toe, right through the center of the heel, like a tripod. So if you're thinking about equal weight, it should feel like you can keep balance through the center of your foot.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, and that's going to translate into the one leg versions. So let's move on to those. So with the one leg version, it's what it sounds like. So it's going to end up looking like this. Okay. So key things to point out. So I'm going to have you let's face away from the camera, and I'll have you do a couple. Yep.
Okay.
So pick which leg you want to do. So we're going to go over some common things you don't want to see. Okay. I'll take the
Single
stick.
leg?
Yep. Okay. So her foot's actually starting to turn out a little bit, and her hip's about to come up. So I'm going to challenge you to keep your foot pointed down and keep your hip closed off and down as you do it.
I feel the difference there.
Okay, what do you feel?
In my glutes, outer glutes are activating more.
So that's actually one of the main benefits of this exercise is you train those hip rotators. Okay, so let's do 5 reps, just trying to work on that point.
It's crazy, just those little tiny tweaks make such a big difference.
Yep. And try to come, okay, good on the way down. Just keep it nice and straight. Come all the way back up. So she was kind of shortchanging her motion. She would go down and then stop 2/3 of the way up. You want to try to get that full movement through the hip. Okay? Awesome. So then let's face back towards the camera, sideways to the camera. So some other mistakes, let's see like an overarch.
Okay, I'll be good at that.
Yep. So a big one too is again like the regular Romanian deadlift, losing that kind of more naturally straight spine and overarching through the lower back. Again, not the end of the world. So you're always trying to improve your form. Things don't always have to be perfect. That's a big point. Progress over perfection. We want to make sure we're getting stronger and exercising. So again, you could use the dowel like we did in the prior video. Another good one for that, or another common mistake, is when you do things not quite sequenced. So you would kind of bend and then kick back, or kick back and then go down, or kind of do this, is to use a dowel with your hand and your foot. So let's try that cue. Put it on the outside foot.
Outside foot?
Yep. So she's keeping the pressure on her hand and her foot. So she's going, it helps her move as a unit. So she doesn't have a pause from the upper body to the lower body. And you can use a foam roll if you have one of those at home. That's a great tool.
This is really helpful.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, try to keep that tripod. She's losing that big toe. Fantastic. Okay, come on back up. Okay, I'll take that. Okay, so there's quite a few variations too as well, how you hold the weights or even kind of where you put your back foot. You can even keep your foot on the ground a little bit. If you're really having a hard time with the balance, you don't feel safe, you can do something called the kickstand variety. So let's try to show the kickstand variety. So you're gonna put your foot just a little bit back on your toes, okay?
Do outside foot again.
Yep. So she's still the same motions happening on this her left leg here. She's trying to hinge back, keep her back straight. So she's using that back foot as a rudder, if you will. So if you don't trust your balance, but you want to work that front leg, this is a really great exercise to do. I give it to plenty of my patients because it's also easier to go heavy with the weights. So if we're trying to get some one leg strength out of it. Okay? Awesome. So another thing is where you hold the weights is another important aspect. So let's start with holding them in both hands. Okay?
Thank you.
So you want them just kind of relaxed at your side, and as you go down, you just kind of let them go straight down. You don't want to throw them in front of you or keep them in your hips. Good. How does that feel?
Good.
What
Really
do you feel?
trying to work on the tripod.
Yeah.
I feel a lot, the weight's obviously pulling me down, so I'm really having to control the weight down instead of dropping.
Exactly. So one of the beauties of the Romanian deadlift is it works that hamstring eccentrically. Eccentrically means as you're using it, it gets longer. So we use a lot of that concept in rehab or injury reduction, kind of it helps muscle strain prevention is the idea. So there's a lot of exercises people do for hamstring strains. This would be one to do in general in your program to try and minimize that risk. Both the double leg and the single leg version. Now you've had hamstring problems before, right?
Have, yeah. So would this be something that I would do, like say I strained it, which I have in the past, would I be doing this with a strained hamstring, or how would I go about that?
Eventually you would. Now, depending on how bad your strain was, pain, all those things would be big factors on when you would start initiating that exercise. But it would be definitely high up on the list of exercises to get back to full participation in your sport, but also to try to reduce the risk of doing it again, since hamstring strains are a very common thing to keep doing. Over 30% will people restrain their hamstring.
For just like a common, like I'm a healthy, average person, what is the benefits of doing hamstring strengthening exercises?
Lots of them. So obviously still hamstring strength, so that's one of the most powerful muscles in your lower body, and your glutes. So your posterior chain is what we call that, your hamstring, calves, glutes. You work a lot of balance, so all those muscles in your foot and your ankle to help with, say you've had a lot of sprained ankles in the past, it could be a good exercise to do. If you have a history like plantar fasciopathy, Achilles issues, strengthening up your lower leg in all directions is a good idea. It also just is a very key movement in sports. We hinge and we move a lot at any movement, so just training that motion and getting it stronger and more robust is always a good idea. Okay?
Awesome. And then undertrained hamstrings, so not necessarily injured, but undertrained. You're just more prone to injury that way, or what are some?
Possibly. We know that strength training can have a reduction in injury risk. So I can't say like if you do this exercise you'll never get hurt, or if you don't do the exercise you're going to get hurt. I cannot say that. But you can minimize your risk by doing strengthening. And we know that people that have had hamstring strains in the past can tend to still have weaker hamstrings and be at a risk of re-hurting themselves later. So it's a really great exercise for that. I really love the foot and balance benefits out of it too.
Yeah.
And really that outer hip if you're doing it right.
It's crazy. I mean, how many RDLs have I done before? And I don't think I've ever specifically paid attention to my big toe.
Okay. Big toe on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Big toe staying down for the tripod and big toe in the back not turning out.
Yeah.
That helps you stay nice and closed off so you really get that hip rotator
Yeah,
benefit.
and like I said earlier, just those little tweaks I notice such big differences.
Awesome. So I'm going to challenge you with the airplanes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so the airplanes, we're really going to take that concept of once you're proficient at doing the basic movement, challenging your hip rotators and your foot stabilizers through a rotary movement. So imagine you're an airplane turning in the sky. That's what's going to happen.
Okay.
So we'll do some facing the camera and some from sideways so they get an idea. Let's start facing, they might see it better. So let's do like halfway down. Okay. So what Emily's going to try and do is turn her whole body like as she's turning to the right, like an airplane. Keeping that foot tripod. Then control it back down, and now you're going to even try to go a little bit like you're turning slightly to the left, all the way down. You got to close it off, and then come back up. Awesome. Whew. That's not easy, right?
It's hard.
What do you feel working with that variation?
I mean, definitely when I'm turning in or away, my outer hips and glutes definitely activate.
So it's a great, again, that eccentric idea of getting your outer hip muscle. So people have had like really chronic, some people get diagnosed with bursitis in their hips or tendinopathy in their gluteal muscles. If we're able to start getting to that exercise at some point to start strengthening it through some length is a good progression down the road. How about when you went up, like turning to the right?
Let me try it again. Let me remind myself. These are even new to me.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay, keeping the big toe down the whole time, then turning the body like an airplane.
It's an interesting feeling, really feeling your hips opening up.
It's really going to challenge her inner ankle muscles too.
Yeah.
So that posterior tib, which is a very common muscle that can be an issue for certain foot problems.
Whew,
okay.
that's hard.
And you can do varieties of this where you can go down, do the airplane, and come back up.
Yeah, I know it's challenging or really working my balance through my ankles, even not like challenging my tripod like stance even more.
Another one that's kind of fun is to go a little bit at a time. So let's turn sideways. I'm going to challenge you here. Do you want to do the other leg or you want to give your right? Keep going.
Let's try the other leg.
Okay, turn, let's go all the way around. There we go. So you're going to go maybe 10 degrees before you try it.
Ooh.
Okay, and go a little deeper. Try again.
Do you want me just opening up?
You're doing both ways.
Both ways? Okay.
Yep. You go even deeper. Not in your knee, your hip. So getting a more of a bend of the hip. You run into your hamstring tightness there a little bit.
My hamstrings are tight.
And back down. Okay, so almost like a ladder. You go down one rung of the ladder and you try the airplane. So as you're doing that, so now we're working the rotation of the hip and increasing levels of hip flexion while having weight on the ground. So again, anytime you play sports, I mean, you change direction and turn at different variations of hip flexion all the time. So it's a great way to kind of get into those different pockets of your hip and see if you have control over them on one leg.
Well, John, thank you so much for showing me those different variations, starting at the basics and building our way up for that single leg RDL. Super helpful for me. I hope it was helpful for you as well at home, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thank you for watching our video. If you liked it, please hit the like below and subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. We'll see you next time with Team Apex.